Good evening. Happy Monday, rare Monday edition of Talking Sports with Evan. I'm Evan Witalis, and thank you so much for tuning in and watching or listening, however you are doing the listening or paying attention to the show. And had to get a show in today. NBA playoffs officially start Wednesday, I believe, or Tuesday, Wednesday, the playing games. And have to talk some NBA playoffs and had to bring in good friend of the show, Tristan Thomas, to talk some NBA playoffs along with some other stuff for with me here tonight. And thank you so much for coming on and talking some Bucks and NBA and whatever else we decide to talk about.
Grant, as always, it's always good to chop it up with you. Like you said, you threw out the back signal. Here I am. Had to show up. Had to chop it up with you, and hopefully we can teach some people some things. Have some smart takes here, not blowy takes there.
Yep, that's what we're going to try to do. And in a minute, I am going to try to play you some audio from yesterday. And I remember the last time I played audio, I got kicked out of the show. Um,
Like you did.
so we'll see what happens here. But there's some comments that Doc made yesterday during his. Well, maybe I'll only get to play you one bit of audio, and I don't know which one saved off the top of my head. Maybe I can try to upload a different one. So while we're on the air. Uh, okay. So I think I got that. Okay, I got them both up. But tonight, main focus talk some NBA playoffs, Milwaukee Bucks chances in the NBA playoffs, and um, not looking good for the most part with the way they've ended the season, kind of on a dud. And the NBA playoffs are set with the play-in games taking place in a little bit tomorrow. I believe the first game. Correct me if I'm wrong. My computer's being very slow. Yep, tomorrow, Lakers, Pelicans, Warriors, Kings, and then Heat 76ers, Hawks, and Bulls are the play-in games to see who's going to play the first and second seed, which in the Eastern Conference, it's the Celtics and the Knicks. What are your quick thoughts on those play-in games this season? It seems to be some pretty intriguing matchups like the Heat and the 76ers.
Yeah, Heat and 76ers are definitely a very, very intriguing matchup. The conspiracy theorists out there are saying, well, the Bucks slid out of the two, so they wouldn't have to face either the Sixers or or the Heat. So it would be take that for whatever you want. It's very intriguing because only one of those guys is going to really, I mean, potentially both of them could make it out of the pit because the loser goes on for a second chance game to make it to the eighth seed. But potentially only one of those teams is going to make it through the pit, and it's that's going to be a fist fight. Two physical teams, two coaches who just know how to move the chess pieces around, have won championships. It, it, I'm very much looking forward to it. It's very, very intriguing.
Yeah, and then you got the Bulls and the Hawks, the other Eastern Conference play-in game, and Hawks have gotten here without Trey Young. That's impressive to me, and they lost their star player, and they've continued to make it to this point. I would have thought they would have fell out of contention altogether, but either they've exceeded expectations, or that's just kind of how the Eastern Conference is right now. Probably one or the other.
It's how weak the back end of the Eastern Conference actually is because they treaded water. It's not like they were world beaters. They had a little bit of a good stretch there without Trey Young, but then they kind of reverted back to their normal selves of what they've been all season long. Kind of backed into the playoffs there, got a shot to make it to the actual playoff field, but they got a tough matchup in the Bulls. The Bulls, when they play right, when they're making shots, they could be very, very tough. So that's very intriguing. Not as intriguing as Heat 76ers,
No.
but it could be a very fun game.
Then you got Lakers, Pelicans in the the Western Conference. Here I'm moving teams in the different conferences now. Granted, the Pelicans in the Eastern Conference would make a little bit more sense, but I digress.
Yeah,
And then Warriors, Kings, two other pretty good matchups going on.
yeah, you're talking about a young budding rivalry with the Warriors and then the Kings after their playoff series from last season that went the distance, all 7 games. Warriors were able to pull it out barely. That another very, very intriguing, could be very, very fun game. And then the Lakers and Pelicans. And I said a healthy Pelican squad is a good Pelican squad. Unfortunately, they lost Brandon Ingram towards the back end of the season. Uh, Kind of had to tread water there a little bit. Zion's been healthy; he's been playing phenomenally. It's the Zion that we all thought we were going to get straight out of college, but he's here now. He's been wonderful. CJ McCollum, healthy, been doing his thing. So but that could be very, 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 very intriguing because if they could defend against those Lakers and get just enough offense and guys are on, they could make it past the Lakers and get that 7 seed.
Who do you think wins these playing games?
Ultimately, I think the experience of the Lakers may weigh out, but it's hard to say that because we would think their experience, their talent, what they're able to do defensively, what they're able to do offensively when they're on and everybody's healthy, they could be I don't want to say back to that 2020 team that won it all, but I mean the pieces are there. They could do that, but they've been inconsistent. They've risen up against the Bucks to come back in those types of games, but then they kind of played to the level of their competition. So the Pelicans being a good team, if they're going to play to the level of competition, I think they may squeak by. I'm really hoping the Pelicans do win that game, but I think the Lakers, with their experience, may squeak by in that one. And I think the Warriors have been battle tested. I just the it's not like the Kings have fallen off the face of the earth. They're still a very good basketball team, but they don't guard anyone. So when you don't guard anyone and you have a team who has won championships based on not only what they've been able to do offensively, but what they've been able to do defensively, and that's if Draymond can keep himself in the game and not do something stupid. But I digress. I think the Warriors can squeak by the Kings. And as far as the Eastern Conference goes, that Hawks Bulls game is just such a throwaway. I mean, like I said, it could be a fun basketball game. It's technically playoff basketball. That's a you flip a coin. I'll go Hawks. I mean, just because. I mean, I'll go Hawks in that one. And then that 76ers Heat game is probably the toughest to predict, just because these teams kind of mirror each other. I can't I can't bet against Coach Spo. He's proven time and time again to not count his teams out, and I cannot count them out in this one. If they don't win the straight out 7 seed, they'll go and they'll probably get the 8 seed against whoever comes out of that Hawks Bulls game. But I'm going to go with the Heat to win the game outright.
Yeah, I would prefer the Heat get that win. Poke the 76ers the 8th seed. They can be the 7th seed. I know what it potentially sets up in round 2, but I I kind of want to see Philadelphia and Boston match up in the playoffs. I kind of want to see
Physical.
that. I kind of want to see that happen. Joel Embiid is coming back, still probably not quite 100%. I like that matchup. I want to see that matchup more than want to see Boston and Miami. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, but like I said, Miami just like remember when everybody was like, "Oh, Miami's struggling, Miami's this, Miami's that." I was like, "You're not fooling me with Miami. You're not gonna pull the wool over my eyes with my." Every time you think that the Heat are dead, they find a way to revive themselves and become this playoff beast and make a run straight through the Eastern Conference. So nobody's fooling me with Miami. I think they're ready. I think they've been kind of laying in the weeds, and now it's time to wake up. I don't want to say they're a flip the switch team, but given their recent history, they're a flip the switch team, and it's playoff time. So I, even if they were to go up against number 1 seed Boston, who just were a runaway number 1 seed from from tip this season, they were the best team in basketball. I think it would be a very physical series. I think the Celtics will absorb some punishment in that series. It would be a very good series to watch. I'd be very intrigued by it because as good as Boston is, I mean, it's playoffs now. It's playoffs now. Are you going to still defend at the same level? Are you going to be able to stave off this playoff Miami type team that you know their recent history? So it intrigues me that matchup does. But yeah, Sixers, Boston would be a very very good series. Honestly, you can't go wrong with either of those guys at the 8. Both those teams are very intriguing no matter where they go in the playoffs.
Yeah. And I like the Boston 76ers matchup better than the Knicks and 76ers matchup. I like that matchup a little bit better. And Boston, and we're going to get to the Bucks in a minute. Boston, they remind me a lot of the 2019-2020 Bucks and the 2020-2021 Bucks, where during the regular season they're just blowing everybody out, beating everybody, not really having a challenge much. But anytime a team would play them tough, they don't respond well because they haven't had a lot of teams play them tough, and then they shoot a lot of threes and they depend a lot on the 3 point. Now coming into the playoffs, is that going to come as a disadvantage to Boston now that their games are going to be probably played at a much tighter level?
Yeah, we saw it last season. It kind of came back to bite them. They when they are making their threes, they are virtually impossible to stop because now you have to respect the three. You have to guard them out there, and they're just going to blow right by you, and get straight into the paint. I mean, and they're not playing the Bucks every single round, so they're not going to make every single thing that they see, every single shot that they take, like they seem to against the Bucks anyway. Peyton Pritchard, um, it bit them last season. Did they learn from that? I don't know. It's going to be very, very uh, intriguing to watch, intriguing to see how they kind of make those adjustments, have those adjustments, and if they've learned anything from last season. Because when they were not making their shots, that's what did them in, and they came back with kind of that same offensive mindset of, yeah, we're going to barrage from three, allow the Bucks, let it fly. But then, like you said, when they get played physical and when they get played tough, they don't respond well because nobody's really bullied them before all season. They've been blowing the barn doors off everyone. So it's going to be intriguing to watch to see if they did learn anything from that, if they could get better execution in the half court. If Jalen Brown is not going to shrink in the moment, if he's going to rise up to the moment, it's not like this team hasn't made the NBA Finals before. People forget they made the NBA Finals just a couple seasons ago. So it's not like they can't make their way through the playoff battles, but it's about learning from the failures of those playoff battles and adjusting to it. We'll see.
Yeah, one team, and this is where I'm going to segue to the Bucks. The one team that tends to play the Celtics extremely tough. All the matchups between the two teams this year been close. I know the Bucks got them twice. The Celtics got the Bucks twice, and the Bucks seem to match up well against Boston. But in order to play Boston in the playoffs, they have to get there. And I put a question out on Twitter, got some response, but I think the response pretty much fits where my narrative is right now with the Milwaukee Bucks. My question is, when will the Bucks playoffs end? I have round one, round two, conference finals, and then NBA finals win. 41% say round one, and 35% say NBA finals win. I look at the Bucks as a team that could go anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose in the first round. I wouldn't be surprised if they make the finals, win it or not. I don't think there's any in between. Is that kind of your vibe on the Bucks, that you wouldn't be surprised really what the Bucks do now come the postseason?
100%. It's been a weird season. You transition on from Mike Budenholzer and a style of play that has led you to the mountaintop, and it's led you to defensive excellence, which is really where Fear of the Deer came from. It came from the defensive prowess of this Milwaukee Bucks ball club, and you kind of lost that luster there. You allow teams to score in the paint at an alarming clip, which is something that you didn't do before. So now they have the confidence that, okay, if we're not hitting our shots outside, we can go inside. So you transition to a new coach, and Adrian Griffin. You get rid of him after going 30-13 or 30-11, whichever it was, and now you go on to the guy that you originally wanted anyway, and Doc Rivers, in half a season, hasn't had a full training camp, hasn't had a full off-season program to get his players
Yeah,
acclimated to
whole
what he
roster.
wants to do. Exactly. So it's been a weird season, and you have to take it as it comes in the playoffs. The fact that they made the playoffs and won the Central Division for the sixth straight year is really, given the way that they played. Their up and downs. It's nothing short of a miracle that they've crossed the finish line to get into the playoffs, to get a top four seed, to be a division champion. I wouldn't be surprised if they got bounced in the first round. I wouldn't be surprised if they were the team that finally got it together, it clicked, and made a run to the finals. It's really no in between for this team. It truly is not.
Again, joined Talking Sports with Evan with Tristan Thomas of Talk Sports. Again, thank you for coming on, enjoying the show today. And talking about Doc. Well, I'm going to start with Griffin and then Doc. So, with Adrian Griffin, and you said it best last time I had you on, just because your record is whatever it is doesn't mean you're good. The Bucks had a unstoppable offense under Griffin. Probably not sustainable, but unstoppable throughout Griffin's tenure in Milwaukee. They just couldn't stop anybody. They bring in Doc. The defense got better. It's had its moments, especially if they have to get back in transition. They don't do that really well. It's had its moments where the defense has played extremely well, but the offense have kind of taken a big drop. And the other, you look at the record as Doc as a whole. You just look at the record. If you just look at the record, you're going to say, well, the team just isn't very good with Doc. And to me, I think the biggest issue you're having is first half of the year, Giannis is pretty much healthy the entire season, playing every day. Dame, very up and down, still playing every day. Middleton was the one that was in and out of the lineup. But for the most part, when the Bucks starting fives together, they're almost unstoppable. But since Doc's taken over, I think it's only 8 or 9 games where they've had Middleton, Dame, and Giannis on the court together, and a couple of those games, at least one of them left early. Is it the injuries kind of catching up to them with Doc, or is the offense just not that good with Doc running the show?
Honestly, the injuries definitely don't help. You can't really get that continuity that you want and that you need to really go and make a run in the playoffs. Doc has a different offensive philosophy, and it is really curtailed the prowess of this Bucks offense. Like you said, and you said eloquently, with Griffin on the helm. I mean, they were just an offensive juggernaut. Everybody talks about Indiana's offense. They just put up 157 just the other day in the season finale. The Bucks were kind of right there with them, right behind them, with the amount of points they were able to put up every single game. And now you hate to say you trade offense for defense, but that's kind of what happened. It kind of flipped. Everybody wanted the defense to get better, but they didn't want the defense to get better at the cost of the offense. You could still be a very good offensive team and be a top defensive team. That's what the Bucks were under Mike Budenholzer, top 10 in both categories for most of the years that he was here. So it's very possible to do so. So whatever he's doing offensively, and I know he got Dave Yeager in there, who is also an offensive guy with a defensive mindset as well. But whatever they're doing, it's just I think they're more so concentrating on the defensive end, and they're kind of forgetting the prowess that they have offensively. And you're going to need that prowess to be able to get the buckets and clutch moments come the playoffs. Yes, you need stops. Yes, you need the defense to be better, but you have to be able to score because if you get stops, but it's not enough, and the other team has one more point, and that clock ends, you lose. So it's like I said, it just encompasses of how weird this year has been for the Milwaukee Bucks. It's just been a weird journey for them.
Well, there's two comments Doc made last night or yesterday afternoon after the game that one I think is a big issue with the Bucks, and the other one kind of goes along with it. And hopefully we don't lose each other when I play this. But here's one of the comments.
Yeah, I thought way too many ISOs. And not only did we ISO the wrong guy. Jonathan Isaac changed the game for them. He's long, he's effective, and it was we just kept setting pick and rolls with him instead of other guys. But good lesson, you know. Yeah, I thought way too many ISOs.
It's not going to stop on its own. And here's the other one.
I didn't like many of our looks. I thought defensively they were great. So I didn't like a lot of our looks. I didn't like a lot of our possessions, and that's on me trying to get them in the right spot. But we didn't run a very good offensive game tonight. I didn't like many of our looks.
And I think big reason was that is Dame wasn't seemingly 100%. I know he took Dame out, I think, with 10 something to go in the fourth quarter. It was early fourth quarter he took him out. and Giannis being gone, your two main ball handlers. But when the Bucks on offense seem to get in trouble, and it's when shots aren't falling, is they seem to play too much ISO ball. Do you agree with that?
100%. It's a fallback, and Doc, that's got to be on me because I'm trying to get guys at the right position. You haven't been able to get them in the right position all the entire time you've been here offensively. I mean, you look at their offensive rankings from when before he took over to where after he took over, they're horrendous. They're near. I won't say they're near at the bottom of the league. They're definitely not where they were. They were not top 10. I think they were like 18th, 19th, something like that. So it's not good.
Would you do the switch all over again, or if you had to go back in time, you know what you do know, now, go back in time and let Griffin finish out the season, and then see what happens come playoff time, or would you make this move again, let Griffin go and bring Doc in, or would you have gone a different coach instead of Doc?
Think if it were me, and yeah, and you got to remember, players were talking about Griffin, and I mean, when it starts to erode like that, you have to make that change. So it, from the mere level of erosion, even though I would want to keep Griffin there for the duration of just at least this season, I would feel that a change was needed. So I felt, given everything, you take everything into account, a change had to happen. Now, would I have gone with Doc? Like I said, Doc was a guy they wanted all along. Doc wasn't sure that he wanted to coach. He was out traveling, he was going to do TV. He just wasn't sure that he wanted to coach. So they went a different direction. I, who would you have brought in? That's the thing. You can't just bring anybody in and think they're going to have success with this ball club. So they went the route they went. Would I have done the same thing? Like I said, given the amount of erosion, uh, the mutiny that was about to happen with Griffin from his players, I would have had to make the move. I think you have a coach the level of Doc Rivers, who a lot of people say he's milking one ring, but they're not saying the same thing about a Nick Nurse. One ring. They're not saying the same thing about a Teron Lue. One ring. They're not saying those guys are milking anything. Frank Vogel, one ring. They're not saying he's milking anything, but Doc is. Um, you have that level of coach who has that level of experience. I probably would have done the same thing. But in my heart of hearts, had it not been for that erosion, I would have left Adrian Griffin there for the duration of the season and then look at everything at the end of the season, take that into account, and then make a decision there.
You think Horst, if he could go back in time, goes a different direction than Griffin? I know you mentioned that Doc was the plan all along. Doc said no, you hire Griffin. That was apparently Giannis's top choice as well. If you're Horst, do you go in a different direction? If you could go back to a year ago or a little less than a year ago when Griffin got the job?
You look at the coaches that were out there, kind of fit, and then you're taking your superstars kind of input into consideration as well. I think Hortz wouldn't have done anything differently. Obviously, you still had success. You won your division. You made the playoffs. You're a top three seed, which remember they won the championship from the three seed just a few seasons ago. But I digress. It's a different year. I don't think he would have done anything differently. And uh, it's hard to say that he should have, given you had success with Griffin, although it was you struggled defensively. You kind of had that erosion with the players, the mutiny that was about to happen. You have the level of a coach of a Doc Rivers, the wealth of experience. He's a championship head coach. He's been to a couple of finals. He's out there. He's available, and now he wants to coach your team. It's hard to say that he did anything wrong and that he should do anything differently.
Now, Dame, before we get to the game itself, the series itself against Indiana, Damian Lillard, they make the trade for him. Kind of affect team chemistry. I know it takes a while to get chemistry back. When you have your stars in and out of the lineup, it's hard to really form that chemistry. But I don't think the season has gone the way I think Damian Lillard wanted his season to go. I think he's top two or three worst seasons of his career when it comes to shooting percentages and stuff like that. And according to Stephen A. Smith, and this is just his opinion, it's not. I don't think he's actually talked to anybody close to Dame. Is saying that he doesn't think he's happy in Milwaukee, and commenting that if Milwaukee loses, in Stephen A. Smith's mind, when they lose, 'cause he's already crowned Indiana moving on, that they need to consider moving Dame out of Milwaukee because he's not happy there. Do you think there's anything to Stephen A's suspicion that Dame's not happy? And if the Bucks lose in the first round, do you even consider moving on from Dame and see what you can even get for him at this point?
Yeah, Stephen A is the king of opinion, not fact these days. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's it's hard to see that because he was a very respected journalist for a very long time with sources that run very deep. He still has some pretty deep sources,
He
but
got to LeBron opting out of his contract before anybody else. But now,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So, it's hard to say that what he's saying isn't the truth because I know he still does speak to a lot of people, but we know what Dame is dealing with. He's dealing with the divorce. He's dealing with being away from a community that he's built, of friends and family out in Portland, where he spent the majority of his career. His kids are out there, so it's when you have all of that change, and it's a sudden change, because nobody expected him to be traded to Milwaukee. Everybody thought it was Miami, that was preferred destination, and what have you. But when he got traded to Milwaukee, that's kind of a shock. Yeah, you're going to play with probably the best player on the planet, but it's a shock because it's so far away from the community that you have built. And now you're going through all this personal stuff, and you could see that it's affecting. We had that very conversation right here on your program that it is affecting him, and you could see it on the court. You could see it in his mindset. We felt that All-Star game was so good for him because he had his family there, and he went out there and he won All-Star MVP. He won the three-point contest in dramatic fashion. He was able to kind of just turn all that off for just a little bit and just be Dame, have fun playing the game. Do
Well,
they make it? Do they make a change after if they lose? First of all, the matchup is difficult, but we'll get to that in a minute. But I don't think they move Dame unless they know they're going to get a king's ransom for him to be able to rebuild this team. That's the only way that I see that happening. And with the type of contract that he has, who has the draft capital, who wants to absorb that contract, it's a lot that goes into it. I don't foresee it happening. But then again, we didn't see a lot of the stuff that's happened with the Milwaukee Bucks over the past year and a half, happening at all anyway.
the reason the Bucks traded for Dame because we've seen, and I thank Drew Holiday for everything he did in Milwaukee. But on the
Absolutely.
opposite side of things, when the Bucks needed a bucket in the half court game, Drew Holiday, unfortunately, come playoff time, wasn't that guy. This is why they traded for Dame. Sunday, game one, Indiana. This is why they traded for Dame Lillard. Come playoff time, that they got someone that can go out and get buckets. They got someone that can score when they need that basket. And with him and Middleton both having really good mid-range games, good three-point game, Dame can attack the rim, get to the line as much as anybody in the NBA. This is why they traded for him. Everything that's happened in the last 82 games is completely irrelevant now because it's a whole new season. And Dame needs to show starting Sunday. This is why they traded for Damian Lillard. And Indiana, 5 matchups against the Bucks this year. The Bucks took one. Giannis has averaged 42 points per game against Indiana. Wasn't enough in 4 of those matchups. Indiana, tough team, tough matchup for the Bucks. They move the ball a lot. They can run. What are your thoughts on that matchup? And then your thoughts on what I just said about Dame and why this is where it's Dame's time to shine.
Yeah, we all know that the move was made for playoff time. We absolutely 100% understand that. With We saw what happens when Middleton goes down. They don't have that guy that can go. And it's not to say that Giannis is a clutch, but Giannis is going to go to the basket. They're going to attack the paint, and they're more than likely going to get the offensive foul against Giannis. That's just how teams play them in the playoffs and in the clutch. So when you saw what happened when Middleton goes down, they don't have that guy that could go create his own shot, get those clutch baskets, and we know how key Middleton is to anything that they want to do. So you go and you get a Dame, one of the most clutch players in all of the NBA, a top 75 all-time player. You team him up with another top 75 all-time player and quite possibly the best player on the planet in Giannis right now currently. So this is the time that he needs to show that, hey, it's Dame time. You're not going to have Giannis. I feel 100% confident saying you're not going to have Giannis game one. And even if he is available, you're not going to have him at 100%. But I don't believe you're going to have him. So now it's going to be on you. The stage is the biggest. The lights are the brightest. The expectations are probably the highest that they've ever been because you are on a team that can possibly win a championship. So this is Dame time. You need to show up for Dame time and perform like that clutch player that we all know that you are. Now, as far as the matchup with Indiana goes, you said it. Indiana runs. The Bucks don't like to run. Now, it's a far departure from what they had been because they were great in transition. They were great with fast breaking team under Budenholzer, but they don't like to be sped up. This variation of the Bucks, they have gotten so much better with the half court, which is something that we wish they would do back under Budenholzer was get better in the half court. That's one reason why they had so many of those heartbreaking playoff losses because they could not execute in the half court, but now they can. They don't like to be sped up, and Indiana speeds them up. It makes them uncomfortable, and now they're trying to play a run and gun game with them, and they can't, or at least have shown they can't exactly run and gun with those guys. Like I said, they just dropped 157 points in their season finale. So it's a tough matchup. It's a tough draw. You knew you were going to see those guys again, and this time you got them for potentially 7 games. So you're gonna have to figure some things out. You're gonna really have to figure some things out. We know we've been saying it all season. We've been hearing them say it all season. Oh, we'll figure it out. It'll come together. It'll click. You need to have it together. This is playoff time. And every game's gonna be different. Every battle's gonna be different. You're gonna learn something new. You're gonna get sick of these guys because they're the only team that you're playing for the next few days. Figure it out. Show up. Show out. It's time.
Yeah, thing to keep in mind: the 5 times that they played, thanks to the in-season tournament, the 5 times that they played, they were all under Adrian Griffin. Doc, this is Doc's first crack as head coach going up against the Clippers. I mean the Pacers. Thinking Clippers as Doc's former team, but anyway, this is Doc's first matchup against the Pacers. I'm curious to see what they do different defensively with or without Giannis, because when they played them in the past defensively, it was Griffin style, which wasn't really protecting the paint very much, and you could get guys attacking the paint. And Tyrese hasn't been the same player since coming back from injury, too. He had a hamstring injury, missed some time, and he hasn't been the same player. And then there's always TJ McConnell, who seems to do his best Steph Curry impersonations anytime he plays Milwaukee. But you said you don't think Giannis will be available game one. Is that just a hunch, or do you? I guess do you just because of the injury you don't think he'll be ready?
Because of the injury and how close it was to the start of the playoffs, we've seen him be superhuman and heal, but I mean, eh, this one's tough. You talk about a soft tissue injury. It's extremely tough. They don't want to push him. You have Dame there. You have, even though he's not even 100%. You got Chris Middleton. I mean, Ruby Portis is should be 6 man in the year. They're probably going to give that to Malik Monk, but I digress. So it's just a tough injury to try to come back from. And like I said, even if he is available for game one, he's not going to be 100%. You're not going to have full on Giannis. And if he does, I mean, he's just going to prove me wrong. It'd be superhuman yet again, like he did when he played in game one of the finals when nobody expected him to, when he put up 20 and 15. So it's highly possible, but the timing of the injury, the type of injury, The fact that he's getting daily treatment and they're trying to reevaluate him every single day tells me that he's not going to be ready for game one.
If he's not ready for game one, or worst case scenario, he's not ready for the series at all, obviously you got Dame. I think Beverly's pretty much taken over the starting spot from Beasley at this point. You got Middleton. You got Lopez. What do you do for that number 5 spot in the starting lineup? Do you go Bobby Portis and take some of that energy off away from the bench because now your 2 energy guys are both starting? Or do you start Jay Crowder, which I don't think Jay Crowder was healthy when they played the Pacers either. Or do you do Jay Crowder? Or do you insert, I know it's not going to be Ajax, but do you insert even Ajax in the starting lineup as well? Like, what do you think the Bucks do with that Giannis spot in the starting lineup if Giannis doesn't go?
Yeah, I think you have to start Bobby. I know you would love to have him coming off the bench and be that spark and like I said, he should be 6 man of the year, but I think you have to put Bobby in that starting lineup. And I think the problem I have with Doc is his rotations. Because you saw a lot of Marjan early on in the season under Griffin. You saw a little bit of, you saw some Ajax. You saw a little bit of AJ Green. You saw some guys, and I think those guys should be getting regular minutes because they can help this ball club. But not all of them are getting even regular minutes. Even with AJ Green shooting the way he's been shooting, he hasn't been getting regular minutes. So it's playoff time now. How badly is that rotation going to shrink? And when you're down Giannis and you're probably going to have to end up starting Bobby, what are you going to do coming off that bench? So that's going to be a very important part to this series, especially like you said, if Giannis is not ready for this series. It's going to be a big story. It's going to be a big factor in how they go about their business. So it's my problem with Doc. It was the same problem that I had with Mike Budenholzer, not playing the young guys, not getting them prepared, not developing them, because you're going to need some of those guys to be developed to keep this train moving. The players are only getting older; they're not getting younger. Giannis is going to be 30 later this year. Dame is already in his mid 30s. Chris is already in his mid 30s with multiple injuries. So you're going to have to start developing these guys because they can help you do some things and keep this train rolling. So it's going to be a very important part to this series of Doc's rotations and what he does with that starting lineup and what he does with that bench.
Yeah, it's pretty much since when once Joe Prunty took over as interim, that's when Ajax and Marjan's minutes completely disappeared. I don't think Prunty played either of them at all, and Doc's really only played them in garbage time, games out of hand. Let's throw them out there with Thanasis. Like that's really the only time those two have gotten a lot of minutes. And
Yeah.
like his rotations and how he gives up minutes worry me. And then you mentioned AJ Green, where he's dealing with an ankle injury too. And ankle injuries can be if we just saw how long Chris Middleton was out with an ankle injury. Granted, Green's younger, maybe he heals up quicker, different type of player than Middleton. So maybe he's back ready to go. But I will say this with Giannis. If Giannis doesn't play, it's because he truly cannot go. If the doctors say he can play, he's going to play. He's not going to be like, well, I can play, but I don't know if I'm. No, if the doctors say he can play, he's going to be out there playing, giving it 110%. And then I keep hearing Kevin Durant had a calf injury and he sat out almost a month, and then he ruptured the Achilles or whatever. I get the risk is there, but it's NBA playoffs time. You don't know how many more runs you have in you. I think that's a risk you have to take. If he's healthy enough to play, he needs to be out there playing. But the key is
Durant
healthy enough to play.
And Durant took that risk because people forget, where did he blow his Achilles out at in the NBA Finals?
Yeah.
So he took that risk because he understood what was on the line. And you're right. If Giannis is able to play and the doctors even give him a semi clearance, he's going to go out there and try to play because he's the type of guy who's not going to admit that he's hurt. Like when he went down, he had that look on his face, and everybody thought it was the Achilles. That's the type of look that Giannis has to give for him to not be on that court. He has to be truly concerned with something going on. But now that he knows what it is, and they still haven't exactly said exactly what grade strain it is,
Yeah.
that's the key.
Yeah.
because there's different grades of strains. I mean, it could be a straight up, it could be like a small tear in there that could get bigger if you don't if it goes unchecked and you do a little bit too much on it. So they haven't released the grade of the strain, which is another reason why I'm like, let's take a look at this. He's getting daily treatment. They're reevaluating him every day. That tells me that that grade strain might be a little bit more than what they're letting on. But I digress. If he can play, he's going to play. But again, you just won't get 100% Giannis. He's going to do what he can, but he's not going to be that same explosive guy going to the basket. I think it would be reminiscent to Game One of the NBA Finals type Giannis, where he wasn't so sure on that knee, which turned out to be way worse than any of us knew. So he's going to be a little bit more cautious, but then once he gets through a game and sees what he can do, he might get a little bit more confident. But like I said, just looking at everything and I don't have the confidence that he'll be ready for at least Game One, if at all, this series.
Look at the NBA playoffs as a whole, and then we'll switch to some thoughts on the NFL draft coming up in about a week. The Thunder, the 1 seed, surprisingly. I say that, I mean, like, wow, do they come out of nowhere playing some? I figured they would be a 4 or 5 type seed team, but instead they definitely exceeded my expectations. You got Minnesota and then the defending champion Denver at the top of the Western Conference. Then you got Boston and really just Boston, and that's Bucks get healthy quickly, and then they have to get past the Pacers first. First, I guess, do the Bucks get past the Pacers in round 1, and who do you see it making the NBA Finals in both conferences?
Uh, I mean, honestly, I, I don't have an answer for who makes it to the finals yet because there could be so many wrinkles. You have the bit that these teams have to make it through first, and then, like I said, any of those teams could get hot. So if you look at the Eastern Conference, like I said, you got two potential sleeping giants in the Sixers and the Heat. And both those teams could quite possibly make it. Like I said, the loser of the 7-8 gets another shot um, at a playoff spot against the 9-10 winner. So it's both those teams end up in there. Both those teams could get hot and make a run. So that's so hard. Do the Bucks make it past the Pacers? The Bucks do not allow themselves to be sped up by the Pacers. If they keep the game in the half court, which is where the playoffs usually grind down to, who can execute in the half court, who can be more sound defensively. The Bucks have all the tools to be able to do that, but do they have the consistency to do so? Giannis obviously not being there or being there is going to be a big factor in that. We talked about the rotations from Doc Rivers. That's going to be an important part of it. I wish I could sit here and tell you that I am 100% confident that the Bucks will make it past the Pacers. And you are right. Doc Rivers was not the head coach under any of those 5 matchups against the Pacers. Um, you had some unhealthy folks that are now healthy and there. Sans Giannis. So it's hard. I would have to see at least the game to really make a determination on whether or not the Bucks are going to do what they're supposed to do in the half court offensively if Dame's going to wake up and be Dame time all over again, and if they can get it done and be consistent doing so defensively, because if they get sped up by the Pacers are going to go, or no pun intended, they're going to run away with this series.
Yeah, they definitely have to find an answer for TJ McConnell, though. They definitely have to find an answer for him.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, he just always seems to be but it's always that one player for the Heat outside of Butler. It's I can't think of his name now, but all he seems Duncan Robinson. Always seems to be Duncan Robinson that always seems to kill the Bucks. For the Pacers, it's McConnell. But I think it's going to be a good series. I think the Bucks get the win. I think they're the better team overall. I think it's not going to be an easy series, and I think they do end up getting the win. NBA Finals wise, I just have a hard time betting against the Nuggets. I think the Thunder are too young. I think the Timberwolves. I don't really know what to think of the Timberwolves.
They
And
need Cat. They need to have Cat. Cat's got to be healthy.
I think it's the Nuggets out of the West, and unfortunately, I think it ends up being Boston out of the East with the Nuggets repeating. That's where I'm at right now. I hope I'm wrong and it's the Bucks and somebody else, but that's who I have right now.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could be confident with my picks right now, but it's so much. There's so many teams that could throw wrinkles into all of that, and I have to see if they're going to make the field. Because, like I said, if the Lakers get consistent, at this time of the year, because you're going to have. I mean, obviously, you hope that AD's back injury isn't serious to where he can still be able to go out there and play. You hope LeBron continues to hold up, but I mean, those guys are going to keep playing every single day, every single game now. And if they can get consistent enough, I mean, people forget they made the Western Conference Finals last season. I mean, they have it in them to be able to get it done at this time of year. So it's going to be intriguing to see if they make the field because those are teams, those few teams in the pit are the ones that could throw wrinkles into everyone's NBA playoff bracket.
Yeah, but it's exciting. It's going to be exciting to see what happens moving forward. And I think at this time last year we just assumed the Bucks would make a run to the finals, but then Giannis landed awkwardly on his back and he missed, I think, all but two. He left the game one early and then he came back for two games towards the end of the series. You could tell he just wasn't healthy. So something like that happens to, let's say, the Pacers or the Celtics or the Nuggets, and things can definitely change in a very quickly. NFL draft, a week from Thursday, round one. Packers pick 25. Haven't had a chance to talk with you regarding the NFL draft yet. What do you feel? What do you think Packers are going to do in round number one?
It's gonna be you got so many different areas of need. Which one do you attack first? Do you go and appease your new defensive coordinator and go after one of the corners that people keep throwing out there? The guy out of Alabama, a guy out of Iowa. So I mean, you got those guys that the people are talking about going potentially being on the Packers. But do you go that route? Do you go on the offensive line where you do need the help now? Because there's a lot of movement there. So do you go there? Do you try to get running back depth help? I mean, where do you attack? Do you try to get a linebacker? They have so many different areas of need that I think it would be defensively, but where on the defense they go first, that I don't know. But I definitely think defensively they're going to go and attack first.
Yeah, I am I'm coming into the draft with the opinion that Gutekunst is going to trade up. I think he is going to trade up in the first round to move up and go get somebody. I think there's somebody on the board that he wants, and knowing that he's going to have to go up and get. And the guy who I point to this year as being that guy is Mitchell from Toledo, corner, talked defensive
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
I
it's
think
another one.
he's a target. He's good size, good speed. I know he played at Toledo, and that scares a lot of people because it was a small school in the MAC. But when you're looking at those MAC school players, if you're going to determine if you're going to go with a small school player like that, you look for someone who dominated his level of competition every time he was on the field. And he was the best player on the field week in and week out. And that includes even playing Ohio State. I think he's the target for Green Bay in this first round. I think Goody's going to make a move and not stand pat. I think he's going to trade up and go after somebody, and that's who I'm targeting right now as being that guy. 6-foot corner with speed, definitely the guy you want on the other side of Jair Alexander, and let everything else, defensive back room, kind of figure it out from there. I don't believe the Packers pick at 25. I think if they can't work out a trade to move up, I think they trade out of the first round, get more draft picks and go that route. And because you have to improve the offensive line. You lost your starting right guard. Your starting center is in the last year of his contract. Center might be your starting right tackle's best position in the league. And your left tackle, as great as he played last year at times, you don't truly know if he is the long-term answer or not. So you definitely need offensive line help. Kenny Clark's in the last year of his contract, and with some of that money that's being thrown around at defensive tackles, I don't know if he comes back. So you might want to upgrade that room a little bit. And you only have really 2 linebackers that can play in the NFL outside of special teams on your team right now, in Quay Walker and McDuffie. So you definitely need to fill up that room. And then you mentioned running back as an option that you need some help at. And then safety is still a weak spot, even with Xavier McKinney. So I think there's so many different avenues they could go. But I just think I am about 90% stating that they trade up and 10% saying they end up trading back.
Yeah, it's a dream to think about because I mean, I wouldn't put it past Goot to do that, especially if you have somebody in mind and they're available at a certain spot to where they can get a certain value. Because people just think, oh, as far as free agency, you just point and sign, and that's not the case. And they say, oh, well, this guy's available. We think he's great. Go and get him. But that's not the case. You also have to think about value. You have to think about where these guys fit as far as contract goes and how that contract fits into the rest of the team with the salary cap and all that other stuff. So if there is a target and they could get true value from that target, and they could do so by trading up without depleting all of their draft capital, I wouldn't put it past Goot to do so. But you're 100% correct. I mean, they have so many areas of need. That's why I'm like, I just don't know where do you attack first. But corner would make the most sense, especially with Hapley being your defensive coordinator. He's putting an emphasis on that coverage. Hopefully, not too much to where you forget about that front seven because you got some guys up there that can get the job done. They should be able to feast if what you're saying about your defensive mindset and what you're trying to do with the secondary is true. It should be able to feast up front just based on coverage sacks. So it's one of my favorite times of the year, the draft, because we just don't know it's an exact science, and you just love to see uh, pieces kind of fit together.
Yeah, the areas I don't see the Packers going in the first round, I don't see them taking an offensive lineman in the first round. They have a formula that works. The last time the Packers took an offensive lineman in the first round, Derek Sherrod, 2011, he ends up having a freakish leg break, I think, covering on kickoff coverage, if I'm not mistaken, or something stupid like that. And he never fully recovers. Before that, it was Brian Bulaga, which ended up working out pretty well. But before 2010 and 2011, do you know when the last time the Packers took an O lineman in the first round was before then?
Ooh, it's a lot of picks. I'm trying to page through it in my mind quick.
1996, they took John. Yeah, 1996 they took. I want to say John Michaels in the first round, and
I
then
knew it was the 90s.
Yep, in 1997 they took Ross Verba out of Iowa in the first round. John Michaels from, I want to say, Notre Dame, and Ross Verba from Iowa. Then it was 2010, 2011. So maybe this is the time the timeline is lining up for, this is the time they do it. But they have a formula that works with the offensive line. Bakhtiari was a 4th-round pick. Jenkins was a 2nd-round pick. Myers was a 2nd-round pick. Zach Tom's a 5th-round pick. Walker's a 7th-round pick. John Runyon was a 6th-round pick. They have a formula that tends to work with offensive linemen, and I think that's the route they're going to go. If they take an offensive lineman first in the draft, to me, it's going to be because they trade back into the 2nd round, and that's where they address that position. But Goody has a history of trading up. His very first draft as the Packer general manager, he traded back first. I don't know if you remember that draft. Traded back first with the Saints, so the Saints could get Marcus Davenport, who I want to say is now with the Vikings. Then he traded back up, took Jair Alexander. The following year, he got his additional first round pick with the trade back with the Saints. He then traded up, and then the following year, and took Darnell Savage. He traded up, then took Jordan Love, which I think most people. I think one of the reasons he traded up was to try to get Ayuk, but the 49ers got ahead of him.
Mhm.
Goody's not afraid to trade up. He's
No.
definitely not afraid to move up in the draft, and that's just first round. He's moved around in the second and the third. He moved up in the second round to get Christian Watson after failing to try to trade back into the first round to get Christian Watson. He ended up doing it in the second round instead. But Goody's definitely not afraid to move around if he needs to.
No, and you shouldn't be. As a GM, you should be fearless when it comes to that. I'm not saying to be reckless. I'm saying be fearless that okay, we're going to use some of our draft capital. We're going to kind of move around here, but we feel strongly about this player. We feel strongly about the homework that we put in. We feel confident about this player. We're going to go after him. We're going to do what we have to do in order to make that happen. So that means we got to trade back a couple of times. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We have to go and burn some draft capital. That's exactly what we're going to do. And it's hard to argue with the results. Nobody expected the Packers to do what they did last season, and it could only get better from there. You would hope.
Yeah, definitely can only hope, and I think it will. And again, week from Thursday is a draft, and we'll see what the Packers end up doing. So, thank you so much for coming on, talking some NBA playoffs, some Bucks, some draft quickly with me. I appreciate it. Let the listeners and the viewers know where to find the latest show that you put out.
Hey, TossNationMedia.com. Your home for the Toss Brand of Sports. And of course, Toss Tristian on Sports Show, available everywhere you get your podcast. We got a new episode dropping probably about Saturday because we're waiting to see who actually makes it out of the pit so I can give you a true in-depth thinking with all the teams in the field on what I'm thinking about the NBA playoffs. Maybe I might have a finals prediction at that point. I don't know, but you'll have to listen.
Yeah, and I am planning as of now to have a Thursday show, strictly talking NFL draft. I'm going to work on getting a couple people on as well to join me to talk NFL draft, specifically what the Packers could be looking at. So look out for that. It might be exclusive to my YouTube channel, or it might be here on X and Facebook as well. So I'm at Evan Witt Sports on X or Twitter, whatever you call it. You can find the show on YouTube or Facebook, Talking Sports with Evan, and anywhere podcasts are found. The podcast will drop sometime tomorrow morning, probably between 7:30 and 8, anywhere podcasts are found. Until then, I hope you all have a great rest of your night and hope your week is off to a good start, and we'll talk to you later.